Good evening. I call to order the regular meeting of the Show Low Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. Roll call shows that all commissioners are present. One of the commissioners is joining us by telephone this evening. For the invocation, Commissioner Roberts will lead that this evening, and I will lead the pledge. If you'd like to join us, please stand.
Our dear, kind, and Heavenly Father, we are indeed grateful for all that Thou hast blessed us with. We're thankful that we have a country with the freedoms that we can have meetings without being dominated. We ask Thee to bless us as we go through this meeting tonight, that everyone here will be serving in the best interest of the community, that we can have cordial and pleasant discussion, that we can learn a lot, and that we can accomplish all the things that are good for this community as a whole. We ask Thee to bless all of our residents, that they can be safe, especially from the COVID. We ask Thee to bless that we will be able to have more moisture on the mountain. We thank Thee for the moisture that we've received. We ask Thee to bless that we can do the things that are appropriate. We ask for these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, we do have one item under new business, which is item A, and that's the consideration of a preliminary development plan for Bison Pass, a 16-lot subdivision submitted by Bison Homes LLC, located at 4800 West Joe Tank Road, that being APN 309-30-001Q. Ms. Feckelcotter.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Bison Homes LLC has submitted a preliminary development plan for 16-lot subdivision called Bison Pass. Applicant has indicated that this subdivision will be for single family homes with detached garages, manufactured homes prohibited. Each cabin will have a defined building envelope, with the remainder of the property being common area. Applicant has committed to provide the city with an assurance for future improvements to Joe Tank Road. The gross area of the preliminary development plan is approximately 3.63 acres, with minimum lot size of 1,815 square feet, average lot size of 2,345 square feet, and maximum lot size of 2,478 square feet. Tract A consists of 0.36 acres of private street. The width of the street will be a total of 30 feet from back of curb, which is similar to the retreat villas at Bison Crossing, located off of West Old Linden Road. Tract B includes 974 square feet for a public sewer lift station. Tract C provides 3.04 acres for private parking, utilities, drainage, and open space. This development is zoned PUD, which is planned unit development, and is part of the Bison Ridge development. This portion of the Bison Ridge master plan is identified as commercial. According to the Bison Ridge project narrative, the resort and commercial PUD areas of the Bison Ridge master plan shall allow all residential and C2, which is general commercial, uses. At the regular meeting of November 28th, 2017, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved a conditional use permit, or CUP, for a 23-bed assisted living facility called Highlands at Juniper Ridge. This CUP expired at the end of May 2020, since the project was never pursued. Staff has reviewed the submitted preliminary development plan and has found that it has met all requirements of city code. The subject property shall meet all underlying zoning conditions requirements of PUD zoning. Condition 9 of Ordinance 509 states, A 30-foot height restriction shall apply to residential development areas along the ridge line, and a 30-foot setback will be required on the northwest side of Joe Tank Road. Ordinance number 509 has been included for your review. Current zoning of the surrounding properties includes to the north, south, and east, PUD. To the west, R115, single-family residential, manufactured homes excluded, 15,000 square feet. The current land uses of the surrounding properties includes to the north, vacant PUD, to the south, the overlook at Bison Ridge, to the east, vacant PUD, and to the west, residential. Transmittal memos were sent to all affected agencies, and applicable comments received include from the Timber Mesa Fire and Medical District, or TMFMD, the proposed development shall meet access requirements of the 2015 International Fire Code, or IFC, with amendments as adopted by TMFMD. In addition, the property must meet fire flow requirements for Appendix B of the 2015 IFC as adopted by TMFMD. No public comment has been received regarding the proposed development. After reviewing the findings of facts, discussions with the applicant, the City of Show Low zoning and land ordinances, and the City of Show Low general plan, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approving the preliminary development plan and forward its recommendation to City Council subject to the following conditions. 1. All development shall comply with all applicable federal, state, and local requirements. 2. Public sewer and water lines within the development shall have dedicated public easements. 3. Drainage ways, including basins and culverts, shall be dedicated as private drainage easements. 4. As required by Ordinance 509, a 30-foot height restriction shall apply to the residential development areas along the ridge line, and a 30-foot setback shall be required along Joe Tank Road. And in lieu fee may be substituted for any sidewalks or trails. And all development of Bison Pass at Bison Ridge shall be in substantial conformance to the submitted preliminary development plan, deed restrictions, and the Bison Ridge master plan. Staff, as well as the applicant, are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dr. Cotter. Yes, Director Traskis.
Mr. Chair, before we get started, I think with the questions, I'd like to take just a couple minutes to explain the process behind why we're here this evening. I know we have a number of new commissioners, and even the commissioners that have been on the commission for a while have not dealt with the preliminary development plan for a long time. It's been a while since we had one of these. Essentially, with a preliminary development plan or a plat or a subdivision, it's basically a three-step process. They come in, they submit the plat, or in this case, a preliminary development plan. That's reviewed by staff to ensure that it meets the underlying requirements for the application. Once that's taken place, we bring it to you guys, to the commission who reviews it. The commission then makes a recommendation to the city council. Following city council's approval of a project with conditions, that then opens the door for the applicant to go and do all of their engineering for the project. The reason we don't require the engineering up front, for example, if they went through all the expense and trouble to prepare a drainage report based on a certain number of lots or a certain access or things like that, and that got changed as part of the process we're going through tonight, they would then be going and having to redo all of those engineering plans and reports. So the second step of the process is for them to do those engineering reports once they understand the baseline of the development requirements. Those reports will include things like drainage, roadway design, utility design, infrastructure, all of those kind of behind the scene things. Those get submitted to the to city staff, primarily our city engineer and public works director, for review. Once they've approved that, then the applicant can bring back what's called the final plat. The final plat goes to city council for approval. It does not come to the commission. So tonight is essentially your only look at this proposal. Once the city council has approved the final plat, they can then record the final plat and they can start construction on the improvements with the intention of having the improved lots that they then can build the houses and things on. As part of the final plat approval, we require what's called an assurance. An assurance is essentially a guarantee that the public infrastructure will be constructed. So in this case, you'll see condition number 5. We specifically reference the assurance related to Joe Tank Road. We normally won't do that in a staff report or a staff recommendation because it's already included as part of city code. It's already something that they have to do. In this case, there's a little bit of a wrinkle. And the wrinkle is the city has applied for and we've received what's called a FLAP grant. Forest Land Access Program, I believe is what that stands for. This is a grant that we've been working on for a number of years with the purpose of improving Joe Tank Road from the highway to the Forest Service property that's located to the west. What we're concerned about is if the developer goes in and just builds his portion of the road, which he normally would have to do, that could jeopardize the entire roadway flap grant project. And as a result, we would end up with only a small portion of the road being built by the developer and the remainder not being built at all. And so rather than jeopardize the grant and tell the developer he has to do the road directly in front of his property, what we're recommending is that the developer be responsible for providing that assurance so that if the grant for some reason falls through, we still have that ability to get the portion of the road completed, at least in front of his project. That way we know we're going to get at least part of it. We're pretty confident the grant's going to go through, but as with any kind of government grant, we just don't know. So that's why you'll see that condition number 5 in here on this one. The applicant would still be responsible whether the grant goes through or not. If ADOT comes in and says, hey, you need to do some highway improvements, and those are outside the scope of the grant, the developer would still be responsible for those improvements. So, Mr. Chair, with that, I think that's probably a sufficient background, at least to get the discussion started. We're available for questions. Ms. Fector-Potter can certainly address those. So,
Thank you, Director Tergascas. Do we have questions for staff? Commissioner Roberts.
2 years ago, Eagle Ridge did the development over there on that property. And at the time, it was intended that that developer would do the road improvements all the way from the 260 back to the county line. If I remember right, that didn't happen. When the developer, when everything crashed, the developer went insolvent. Did the city end up having to pay for those improvements along that roadway because of that? That was my understanding.
It's a little bit outside of what we're discussing tonight. That's not really part of this project.
My question is it possible that the same thing could happen here?
No, my response would be no.
Okay.
It's either going to get built by the grant or it's going to be built as part of the assurances that are done by the developer.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff? I have one. Could you tell us on item 6, the in lieu fee may be substituted for any required sidewalks or trails. Could you elaborate on that? I think I know what that means, but could you discuss that a little bit further?
So depending on the size of the subdivision, either side, or if there's like the trails master plan, if that is, so like this, if there's sidewalks required in this subdivision based on the size of the lots, it's pretty much a sidewalk to nowhere. So we decided to put the in lieu fee of, so that, it could be done, improve the trail plan in another area of the city versus having, just a sidewalk that, pretty much doesn't go anywhere.
Okay. So there would be funds set aside for future use or development.
Yeah, for the trails in other areas in the city that are needed.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any questions for the applicant who's present with us this evening? Or were there more questions for staff? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got a question about what are the Joe Tank Road improvements under the grant process? Like, is there an idea what those are supposed to look like, and what kind of the characteristics of those are on Joe Tank Road?
Right, so the improvements as covered under the grant, I believe it's I want to say a 30-foot pavement width, might be a little bit narrower than that, with curbs on the side, ribbon curb, and then just the bar ditches on the side of that for drainage.
No sidewalk.
The grant does not cover any sidewalks, no.
So follow-up question. So if the grant is funded, then the developer would not have to pay for any improvements. It's not like they're participating in the financing of the project. It's either they pay for their portion of the improvements if the grant does not get funded, or the grant gets funded and they don't have to pay for any.
Right, so they would not pay for any of the improvements that are covered under the grant. If there are additional improvements that are required outside of the scope of the grant, the developer would still be required to pay those. So, for example, the intersection there on the highway, if there's improvements that are required that are outside of the grant, that would be the responsibility of the developer. The in lieu fee for the sidewalk or the trail, if that's something that's required on this development, that's the responsibility of the developer. That's not covered by the grant. So while the majority of the costs would be covered by the grant, with the roadway construction, there may still be some kind of ancillary expenses that would not be covered by the grant that would still be the responsibility of the developer.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Commissioner Roberts?
Would this development impact access to the forest lands next to it?
No, this would have no impact on that.
The grant, when will you know?
When they know.
When the check shows up.
Yeah, is it a 6-month window? Is it a year window? Next
So
week?
we're in line right now. Our city engineer as well as our grants coordinator met with the Forest Service representatives about a month ago. Everything is still progressing the way that it needs to on that. It's still a little ways out. I mean, we're still talking probably about 12 months or so before that's going to be finalized and go through. Again, I don't want to guarantee that the grant is going to cover this and it's a golden parachute to take care of the problems. But it is there. And
Mr. Martinson, when are you starting?
We'll get to
Is
that in
that-
just a second. Let's finish up questions for staff, and then we'll move to that.
Mailboxes, is there consideration from, is that even a consideration at this time or?
so mailboxes really aren't something that the city gets
Okay.
involved in. That's where you work with the post office and determine whether you put in one single box.
Okay.
Or whether you have multiple boxes. That's really something the post office determines.
I didn't know if it came into the planning of the roads or anything like that because of, okay, access. Okay.
Do we have any other questions for staff?
One last one. The assurance money also covers that sewer lift?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the assurances cover all public infrastructure. So wastewater, so your sewers, lift stations, sewer lines, your water lines, your roads, that type of thing.
So you have the developer just pay you and you hold it in reserves until you know what's happening?
So the developer provides what we refer to as an assurance. That can take many different forms. We do accept a cash assurance. Most people don't like that because the money's just tied up sitting somewhere. A lot of times they'll work with the bank and provide some type of a bond where essentially the bank gives us a letter of credit and says, here, we'll stand behind it. We'll back it if you need to pull on it. And that's probably the most common.
Any last questions for staff? Commissioner Barlow?
Yeah, I think this question is for staff. So I just want to make sure that I understand as far as what can change as far as this. I know I don't want to, it's not the finalized version, so the preliminary development plan But in point number 4, under the staff recommendations, where it talks about the 30-foot setback required along Joe Tank Road, if I look at the preliminary development plan, it's showing lot 16 that would be within that 30 feet. Is that something that would get fixed later? Or, because I think that could potentially change the total number of lots that you could put on the space, depending on how exactly that shook out.
Right. So we have discussed lot 16 specifically with the developer in regards to that 30-foot setback. He is aware of that requirement. He understands that he needs to be at least 30 feet back from the property line. If they're not able to move and shift things around a little bit, they may end up losing a lot. That's something that is acceptable between now and the final plat when they bring that in.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Not, we can move on to questions for the applicant, which I do believe we have questions for the applicant. Is that correct, Commissioner Hatch?
Yeah, I was just curious when you're starting.
So the applicant who's here could please come forward. You'd state your name and address for the record, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, staff, my name is Gary Martinson. I live at 1 North Bison Preserve Way. As many of you know or maybe know that, I've went through this process many times here in the city of Show Low, and it's always been a great experience. This particular site we have owned since we bought the Bison Ridge property back 20-some years ago. There was a lot going on from 2000 to 2017. Then there was really nothing going on. So there was no real reason to be going into the development process and putting in infrastructure and so forth. So it was kind of ignored a little bit. But over the last couple of years, we have had this property in escrow, and it's fallen out of escrow for one reason or another. Joe Tank certainly has a not a very heavy positive impact on it, not just Joe Tank, but certainly the cost of the improvements of Joe Tank. So, but I finally decided that I think I'm proposing a product that is variety or varied enough so that it attracts a wide variety of buyers, from singles to married couples to winter visitors or summer visitors or whatever they are. So we're anxious I'm anxious to try one more time at this before I get too old for this business. And it's the size of a project that, it's fairly small, as you can obviously see. And so we should be able to get through the development side of it and the building and sale process in a fairly timely manner. So with that, any questions from council?
Commissioner Hatch, did you have a question for the applicant?
Just to start.
Mr. Hatch?
Yeah, just a couple months, 6 months, whatever it takes. What's your lead time?
We'll start doing the infrastructure the day after we get council final plat approval. And that is dependent upon getting our infrastructure, our improvement drawings approved by staff. But we expect that if we do get it going even this spring, it's probably a 3-4 month process. But hopefully we're getting it. We can get into the building side of it this summer and move forward through the fall and winter into 2022.
Thank you. Are there other questions for the applicant?
One last thing, and that's who will be in control of the HOA?
I missed that. What is?
Who will be in control of the HOA ultimately? Will you be in control until all the lots are sold, and then
Yes.
and then an independent panel will be elected?
Yep. Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you all.
Robertson. I appreciate it. So we'll bring it back to the commission for action. discussion?
I moved to approve it. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, there's a recommended motion there. If you agree with that motion, if you could just read it into the record.
Going past the second red page.
This back here.
No. Nope, right here. You got it right in your finger. Right
there?
Yeah, recommendation.
I move to approve the preliminary development plan for Bison Pass, a 16-lot subdivision submitted by Bison Homes LLC located at 4800 West Joe Tank Road. That being APN 309300001Q, subject to the conditions of approval specified by staff, and forward this recommendation to the city council.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hatch, for the motion. The second was by our Vice Chair Hefner. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing and hearing none, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Looks like that passed unanimously 7-0. Director Taraskis. I don't know if there's any disclaimer on this one other than what you've already shared with us.
This is on the agenda for city council at their next regular meeting, which is a week from tonight.
Thank you. We have no further new business, so we'll move to item 6, which is call to the public. Is there anyone here who'd like to address the commission? If not, we'll move on to item 7, which is approval of the minutes from our last meeting on January 26th, 2021. Those were presented in our preparation packet. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes from January 26, 2021.
Motion by Vice Chair Hefner. Do we have a second? Second by, I'll do Commissioner Roberts. Looks like he barely beat you. All right. Any discussion on the minute? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from January 26, 2021 as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Looks like that passes unanimously as well. Thank you, everybody. And then we'll move on to summary of current events. And we'll start with the commission members and with Commissioner Roberts.
Continuing concerns, we would like to encourage everybody to be safe in their social distancing, wearing masks. It seems like lately there's been a lot of accidents, partially because of the weather that we had, but I think also due to some people being more complacent and driving a little faster than they should. So I'd like to encourage everybody to be considerate of other people in both of those respects. Also, because we had some moisture doesn't put us out of the fire danger. So we're looking at a long, dry summer, and we probably all need to be especially cautious and prepared for with 72-hour kits and keep our, follow the fire regulations and the burn permit regulations. That way we can keep our community safe.
Thank you. Commissioner Barlow.
I guess just a reminder that it's Valentine's Day coming up this weekend, so if you need to plan something for that special someone, you're running out of time.
Thank you. That's critical news, actually. Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, tonight was a good indication of how prepared our staff is for these meetings, and I just wanted to recognize and thank them for all their hard work. I know, we get a lot of emails, and there's packets prepared for us to do research. We ask questions, and there's answers to those questions. So just want to recognize staff for all their hard work and, say thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Hatch.
Yeah, I second that. I think it's most of the questions that I thought were really intelligent tonight were pretty dumbed down because they're right in front of me. If I just read, and that's because people in front of me had done the job correctly. So that's not it's not hard to follow up on stuff like that. Sometimes it's a little thick to get through the skull, but appreciate that. And yeah, happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Commissioner Bess, do you have anything to share?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the staff's additional explanation of the process. Learning it and understanding it is definitely what we need to do and to do as part of our jobs as commissioner, and especially the additional information about Joe Tank Road that really helped make some decisions on this, and appreciate that very much. And then just a reminder to everybody to be safe and mask up.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hefner?
So it's like weekly that I have discussions with people about the internet in our area and connectivity. And I'm wondering if we could ask staff to maybe look at a study session to look at the possible adaptation or change of some of our code and presenting that to City Council in regards to cell towers and the way that they're, I don't know, accepted or done, or conditional use permits and things like that. Maybe on existing properties as a way to allow certain things just straight out, that build into the code and maybe change some of that code. So I'm wondering if we can do that, because I think that's something I think the code is, I want to say 20 years old that we're dealing with. And I think it would benefit us to at least study it and figure out if there are some suggestions we can make to the City Council.
Thank you. And just echoing the thanks to staff for helping us be prepared for these meetings. Wishing everyone a happy Valentine's Day. Please stay safe and remember the golden rule. Director Charaskis.
First of all, I appreciate the kind words shared by the commission in relation to staff. That is appreciated. We don't get to hear it very often, so thank you. Secondly, appreciate also the reminder on Valentine's Day. Certainly endorse that. And then finally, the concentration so far has been on Valentine's Day, but President's Day is next Monday. That is a federal holiday. It's a holiday that the city recognizes. So city offices will be closed on Monday in observance of President's Day. We will be back open and ready to go on Tuesday. So, thank you.
And we've completed our business for this evening, and we are adjourned. Thank you for joining.